Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Joining me is Ms. CJ Hero. Hello, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone watching the news tonight. Here are the headlines.
American Samoa is reporting its first ever case of COVID-19. Our EBC correspondent Arian Torres will join us later to give us the details.
Tokyo governor is now considering asking the central government to declare another state of emergency due to the rising number of COVID cases in the country. Our EBC Japan Bureau Chief Dennis Liu will join us live later.
And the WHO is concerned over a sharp increase of COVID cases in Papua New Guinea. And they're warning that the outbreak was at a critical stage now and could fuel a much larger epidemic. Live with us is Echo Ortelesa Kinola from our Papua New Guinea Bureau.
Intricate timing issue that was preventing.
And later, NASA successfully flew the Ingenuity helicopter on Mars.
So right after we found it, our team went in.
First to American Samoa, where the island is now reporting its first ever case of COVID-19. Here's Arian Torres joining us live from our EBC American Samoa Bureau. Hello, Arian.
Hi, Alma. Good evening there in the Philippines, and Talofa, and good morning here in American Samoa.
Yes.
After a long year of being COVID-free, American Samoa case being handled properly, says Governor Lemanu Peletimawa. American Samoa governor has appealed to the public not to panic over a man who tested positive for COVID-19 after being repatriated. According to Lemanu Maunga, the man who arrived with his family on a repatriation flight from Hawaii last Wednesday tested positive for the coronavirus on Friday. He said the traveler had earlier tested negative for the 3 COVID-19 tests in Honolulu. The first test done locally resulted in a non-infectious positive father and family that have been isolated from repatriation group to a separate facility for 14 days. The governor said medical personnel had responded and followed all necessary protocols for quarantining and handling the positive case. Repatriation groups still under quarantine at local hotel here in American Samoa for 7 days at discretion of the medical team. Governor Lemanu urged the public to be assured that the government is following proper procedures in handling this case. Let's listen in to the interview earlier from Dr. Ifeli John Tafa of Department of Health.
One tested positive, and according to our protocol, we will then take another sample and then give this test to be tested with the Gene Expert machine. And after that confirmatory test, it was confirmed that this individual is a positive case. So yes, we do have somebody that tested positive here. And our process is, if you test positive, in quarantine, we will remove you and your family into isolation, which is here at the alternate care facilities in Tafuna.
From listening to the governor's statement, it sounds like the person that tested positive was part of a larger group.
Yes, it was him and the family. We try to keep all family units together so that one's, their exposure risk or level is about the same, similar. And that's the same thing that happened here. We made sure that these passengers are pretty much isolated until that first test is done. So this family and the passenger that did test positive, we made sure that they were isolated and before the test happened. There are some times when we have what we call residual or persistent positive testing, where an individual can test positive previously, and evidence has shown that could go up to 3 months, even longer, that they're still shedding the RNA material of the virus, even though they've already recovered and they are no longer infectious. So that does happen, and we suspect that this case is exactly what that is.
Alma, and that is Dr. Ifeli John Tafa from Department of Health, earlier interview with local radio station here in American Samoa.
Arian, how is school now? I know besides reporting for EBC, you're also a teacher over there. Can you tell us the situation?
So far, we're still on code blue. And code blue means na we're still going to face-to-face pa rin. Wala pang masyadong restriction with the code blue. And so far, lahat from repatriation flight this is the third group actually. And then lahat sila naka-quarantine pa rin so far. And then magre-release sila right after 7 days, like we mentioned earlier. And then yung nag-positive, 14 days sila nasa quarantine site, which is Department of Health facility. So sa ngayon, medyo normal pa yung lahat. And then we will wait for more declaration from the government.
All right. Thank you very much, Arian, for your report, and do take care.
Reporting from American Samoa, this is Arian Torres. We live in interesting time.
Meanwhile, the Tokyo governor is now considering asking the central government to declare another state of emergency due to the rising number of COVID cases in the country. We have now Dennis Blue joining us live from our EBC bureau in Japan. Dennis, tell us more about that story.
Yes, CJ. Tokyo government Yuriko Koike has hinted at the possibility of asking the central government to declare yet another state of emergency over the coronavirus pandemic. The governor said on Sunday that she has instructed metropolitan government officials to respond to a renewed rise in the number of COVID-19 cases in Tokyo with a sense of speed and with an eye to the possible request for a new emergency declaration. The governor said it's indispensable that we act preemptively, Koike said. Tokyo reported 405 new COVID-19 infections on Monday amid a resurgence of infections linked to new virus variants. The figure was the most for a Monday since January 25th and was higher than the previous 2 Mondays, 306 on April 12 and 249 on April 5th, touching on the fact that the daily count of new infections in Tokyo has risen some 20% from a week earlier. Governor Koike reiterated her concern about the spread of highly contagious coronavirus variants among young people and the increase of people going out. Meanwhile, Osaka Governor Yoshimura Hirofumi also suggested on Monday that he will ask the central government to issue a state of emergency in the prefecture to contain surging coronavirus infections. Daily infections in Osaka reached a record high on Sunday. Osaka's medical care system is overstretched. The number of patients in serious condition totaled 286 on Sunday, outnumbering the 248 hospital beds secured for such people in the prefecture. Prefectural officials are requesting that local medical institutions secure additional beds. The Olympic torch relay was barred from public roads across Japan's Osaka region. The governor last Wednesday after a spike in virus cases there prompted officials to declare a medical emergency. A decision to keep the flame away from public view had already been taken for Osaka City, but Wednesday's announcement extends the measure to the entire prefecture. Osaka, Tokyo, and other parts of Japan have declared quasi-emergency conditions until early May, with bars and restaurants being asked to close by 8 p.m. This is the latest for now. Back to you, CJ.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for your update coming out of Japan. Please do take care over there and tell us more of the latest developments there.
You too, CJ. Thank you very much for reporting live from Tokyo, Japan. This is Dennis Liu. We live in interesting times.
From Japan, we go to Papua New Guinea, where the World Health Organization is expressing concern over the sharp increase of cases there, warning that the outbreak was at a critical stage and could fuel a much larger epidemic. Joining us live is Echo Ortelesa Quinola. Hello, Echo.
Hello, Miss Alma. Good evening, Philippines, and good evening, Papua New Guinea. World Health Organization's chief, Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, said that in Papua New Guinea, there is a large-scale community transmission in the capital, Port Moresby, and the Western Province. And all 22 provinces have now reported COVID-19 cases. With 132,000 AstraZeneca vaccine arriving in the country earlier this week from the COVAX scheme, boosting the 8,000 doses already sent by Australia, there was a vital need for more to be sent to the small Pacific nation, he said. Throughout all of 2020, the impoverished country of over 8 million people recorded just 900 cases. But on Thursday, its total climbed to over 9,300 with 82 deaths. But there are fears the real scale of the outbreak is much larger due to low testing rates. Papua New Guinea's Health Minister Jelta Wong said the number of health workers infected with the virus continued to grow. Vaccination efforts have centered on frontline workers in the capital of Port Moresby, with 1,600 people so far receiving the jab. The outbreak has pushed the nation's health system to the limit. Hospitals are already turning away patients due to a lack of medical staff. A temporary field hospital, meanwhile, have been set up in a sports stadium. Expert medical teams from Australia, the US, and Germany are now working in the country to help curb the spread of the virus. Again, Health Minister Jelta Wong flagged vaccine disinformation as a major threat to the rollout, but said he was encouraged that more people from the provinces were coming forward in recent days wanting to be vaccinated.
Thank you very much. Yes, go ahead, Echo.
Reporting from Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, this is Echo Hortaleza Quinola. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Echo. You do take care.
Thank you.
And now families reunited in emotional scenes Monday as Australia and New Zealand launched a quarantine-free travel bubble that opened the border almost 400 days after its pandemic-enforced closure. Watch this.
We're here to pick up my sister and my mum's daughter, Laura. She's arriving from Sydney, I guess as everyone quite knows. And yeah, today's also her birthday, so we're going to embarrass her with this beautiful sign that mum somehow had at the home.
First up, we're going bungee jumping right after this.
We just had this bald guy called Mark come up to us and say free bungee jump, so we said all right. So he's going to take us there and take us back to the hotel. Awesome. So no taxi fare.
There were group hugs and enthusiastic welcomes at airport terminals on both sides of the Tasman Sea as the long-awaited bubble sparked joy and relief. The bubble, which followed months of negotiations between the largely coronavirus-free neighbors, was hailed as a major milestone in restarting a global travel industry that has been crippled by the COVID-19 pandemic. The arrangement means that for the first time since COVID-19 closed borders worldwide, passengers can fly between Australia and New Zealand without undergoing mandatory quarantine on arrival. Australia was New Zealand's largest source of international tourists before the pandemic, accounting for about 1.5 million arrivals, or 40% of total visitors in 2019. But on the first day of the bubble, most of the travelers were returning New Zealanders, with tourists expected to start arriving in large numbers during the upcoming Australian school holidays. Australia is home to hundreds of thousands of expatriate New Zealanders, and before coronavirus, many regularly shuttled back and forth across the Tasman. Australia has previously flagged the possibility of travel bubbles with Singapore, South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan, while New Zealand is working to allow unrestricted access to small Pacific states such as the Cook Islands and Tuvalu. But the leaders of both countries warned further border changes in the wake of the Trans-Tasman bubble would be a slow process.
Laura, she's arriving from Sydney, I guess as everyone quite knows, and
Meanwhile, with vaccine-eligible people hesitating to take the AstraZeneca jabs due to blood clot concerns, in Canada, Alberta's officials insist the benefits of this vaccine outweigh the risks. Canada Bureau Chief Thomas I. Likeness for the details.
In Alberta, the vaccine rollout received another blow on the weekend. On Saturday, the province announced that a patient who had received the AstraZeneca vaccine had developed a rare blood clot. Already, people have been avoiding being immunized with this product because of changing recommendations as to who should receive it, questions about its effectiveness, and the blood clot side effect. The province has been offering AstraZeneca to anyone between the ages of 55 and 64 at mass vaccination clinics. But there are few takers. The clinic here in Edmonton can immunize up to 6,000 people a day. Last Thursday, 413 people booked appointments. A day earlier, only 250 showed up. Obviously, people don't want the AstraZeneca product. Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Hinshaw, says she understands some people are hesitant.
I recognize that there are many that are concerned about this rare risk of blood clots or that may have questions about the efficacy of the vaccine. I'm not sure that, again, my intention is not to have people feel like they're being coerced, but rather to give them the information decision for them.
But Hinshaw insists the benefits of the vaccine outweigh the risks. She says those clots occur in 1 out of every 100,000 to 250,000 cases.
This tells us that the syndrome is very rare, and in this age group, the risks of serious harm from COVID infection are much greater than the risk of this rare outcome. For anyone infected with COVID-19, they are much more likely to experience a blood clot from COVID. About 1 in 4 people hospitalized with COVID get blood clots.
Hinshaw says as cases continue to rise and given the shortage of vaccine, people eligible for the AstraZeneca shot should take it. What health officials are hoping is that the fear of side effects doesn't become a fear of vaccines generally. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.
Thank you for that report. In other news, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said Canada will funnel additional health staff and equipment into virus-hit Ontario as the province battles a worrying spike in COVID-19 infections. Watch this.
The best public health advice tells us the way to roll back this surge right away is to starve the virus by strictly following public health guidelines and restricting your interactions with others. As you do that, we are standing up the kind of help you need. First, we are mobilizing federal healthcare workers from across government departments to deploy to the front lines in Ontario and specifically the GTA, where the situation is most critical. From national defense to immigration, departments across the federal government are standing up support. The federal government will cover all costs and coordinate getting any extra staff from other provinces to the front lines in Ontario, including providing air transportation. Minister LeBlanc has also been in touch with Premier Silver of Yukon, Premier Cochrane of the Northwest Territories, and Premier Higgs of New Brunswick on how they could pitch in as well. To the healthcare workers who are relentlessly fighting this virus, thank you. I know you're exhausted, and that hasn't stopped you from working harder than ever before. We all need to get you more support in critical areas. Know that we're doing whatever we can to help.
Ontario, Canada's most populous province with 14 million people, has for several days struggled with record coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and intensive care patients, all of which are threatening to overwhelm its health system. On Sunday, the province reported 4,250 new cases, 18 new deaths, and 2,107 new hospitalizations. On Friday, Ontario announced it was tightening its lockdown orders to curb the pandemic, including closing its interprovincial borders to non-essential travel. Ontario Premier Doug Ford lengthened the lockdown, now in effect, by 2 weeks until May 19, and ordered Ontario residents to go out only for their basic needs. The provincial government is also limiting capacity at essential businesses such as pharmacies or supermarkets, as well as at weddings, funerals, and religious ceremonies.
And let's now go to the ongoing crisis in Myanmar. The shadow government there wants to join the ASEAN summit that will discuss the ongoing crisis there. They want the Southeast Asian leaders also to invite them there and not to recognize the present military junta. And this will be held in Indonesia next week. EBC ASEAN correspondent Gila Pablo is following the developments from Thailand. Hello, Gila.
Yes, hello, Alma. Good evening. Myanmar's shadow government urged Southeast Asian leaders to give it a seat at the table during crisis talks next week and not to recognize military regime that seized power in a February coup. Monzo Wu, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Parallel National Unity Government, formed Friday by ousted lawmakers mostly from Suu Kyi's party, as well as ethnic minority politicians, said ASEAN had not reached out to them. I quote, "If ASEAN wants to help solve the Myanmar situation, they are not going to achieve anything without consulting and negotiating with the NUG, which is supported by the people and has full legitimacy. It's important that this military council is not recognized. This needs to be handled carefully," end of quote, he told the Voice of America's Burmese service. Junta leader Min Aung Hlaing is expected to join a special ASEAN summit on Myanmar on Saturday in Jakarta, his first official overseas trip since the putsch that ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The army has moved to quell mass protests against its rule, killing at least 730 people, according to a local monitoring group. Min Aung Hlaing's invitation to the meeting of the 10-country Association of Southeast Asian Nations has drawn scorn from activists who have urged foreign leaders not to formally recognize the junta. In another development, Japan is now urging Myanmar authorities to release a Japanese journalist in custody at Yangon prison. Freelance reporter Yuki Kitazumi is one of the list 65 reporters arrested during the junta's crackdown on anti-coup protests. He was detained on Sunday, and a Japanese embassy spokesman confirmed that he was transferred overnight from a police watchhouse to the insane prison. According to an AFP report, Kitazumi hasn't been charged yet, and diplomats are now seeking permission to visit him in jail. Just an added information, Alma. Insane is a notorious for holding political prisoners. So we can just imagine how difficult this might be for those who are detained in that place. And in addition, this is actually the second time Kitazumi has been detained since the coup. In February, he was beaten up and briefly held in custody during a crackdown on protesters, but was later released. At least 34 journalists and photographers remain in custody across Myanmar, according to the monitoring group reporting ASEAN. Local monitoring group Assistance Association for Political Prisoners said 3 reporters in Kachin State from the McKenna News Journal outlet were detained at an interrogation center. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you very much, Gila. And looking forward to more updates regarding the crisis in Myanmar as we follow this developing story. Thank you, Gila. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alma. Stay safe and healthy as always. This is Gila Pablo from ASEAN Bureau. We live in interesting time.
To India now, where the capital, New Delhi, will impose a week-long lockdown from Monday night, according to officials, as the megacity struggles to contain a huge surge in COVID-19 cases, with hospitals running out of beds and oxygen supplies low. Meantime, here are images of people getting tested for COVID-19 as India sees a new wave, including a new phenomenon, younger patients, for a disease usually viewed as riskier for older adults. Watch this.
Some days look worse than the others. Like the days I had like severe chest pains and then not being able to like breathe properly, like having to lie down in a pronated position, which helped me breathe because my nose was clogged. Yeah, those days felt like maybe my time's come. It's a grim thought to have, but like, yeah, that's what I thought. I was personally pretty like fearful for my life because like my cousin works in the hospital, he works in the COVID ward, and then he's told me stories how young people have contracted COVID and shown no symptoms one night, and the other day, like entire organ failure, they passed away. So that was a grim thought that was like constantly playing in my head during my 3 weeks of quarantining. But the general fear in people's mind in the early 20s age group, I don't think so. They have that fear. Most of them feel like they can fight it off.
So what we are seeing, and this is all anecdotal or personal experience, is there are younger patients who are being admitted into hospital and are more sick than the type of disease that young patients usually have, which is mild to moderate. In some cases, we are seeing young patients with even what is called critical disease, where they require high amounts of oxygen or are on a ventilator. Pediatricians have been reported they are seeing kids with little more distressing symptoms than what they would see in the first wave. So that is, in the population less than 16. So that is something that again will have to be looked at.
Some doctors say the reason that under 45s are now vulnerable is that they go to work and eat out more, but there is no proof or definitive proof to that claim. At the start of the year, India thought it had beaten the pandemic and had kicked off a mass vaccination drive. Face masks and social distancing were cast aside, and huge crowds flocked to religious festivals and election rallies. But in hospitals, doctors started warning of a rise in cases, including a new phenomenon, as stated earlier, younger patients getting infected for a disease usually viewed as riskier for older adults. In a country where around 65% of the population is under 35, there is growing concern about the impact on the young. Meanwhile, New Delhi's Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has said 65% of new patients are now below 45 years old. The vast nation of 1.3 billion people recorded a record high of 273,810 infections on Monday, the fifth consecutive day of more than 200,000 cases. Social media has been flooded with pleas by desperate families for hospital beds, oxygen supplies, and drugs and medicines.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. CJ and I will be back right after this break.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
And to the United Kingdom now, where Queen Elizabeth II has laid to rest her strength and her stay, Prince Philip. Aribel Celestino reports from the Windsor Castle.
Queen Elizabeth II on Saturday bid farewell to her late husband, Prince Philip, at a royal funeral like no other, restricted by coronavirus rules, but reflecting his long life of military and public service. The Duke of Edinburgh, who died on April 9 at age 99, was interred in the royal vault at St. George's Chapel at Windsor Castle after a 15-minute service attended by just 30 guests. The Queen, 94, seen for the first time since his death, cut a lone figure set in mourning black with a white-trimmed black face mask. Close family, also masked, sat socially distanced in the historic 15th century Gothic chapel. Philip was described by royals as the grandfather of the nation, was Britain's longest-serving royal consort, and was married to the Queen for 73 years. He was an almost constant presence at her side during her record-breaking reign that began in 1952 as Britain rebuilt from World War II and as its global empire began to unravel. His death, which the family said had left a huge void in the Queen's life, has robbed of her of the man she called her strength and stay, and closes a remarkable chapter for Britain's most famous family and in the country's history. The intimate ceremonial funeral from behind the stately castle walls was broadcast live on television to millions across Britain and the world. A military gun was fired to signal a minute's silence when his coffin arrived at the chapel on a bespoke Land Rover he designed himself. The coffin was draped in his standard and topped by a wreath of white roses and lilies from the Queen, as well as his naval cap and ceremonial sword. Across Britain, on the streets, in shops, railway stations, and at sporting events, people bowed their heads with respect. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, dressed in black, observed the silence at his country retreat, Chequers. The religious service was a simple affair, reflecting the wishes of the straight-talking Duke, who was known for his aversion to fuss. In keeping with his wishes, there was no sermon, but the service reflected his love of the sea and the long association with the Royal Navy, including hymns and Bible readings. The Queen, who had been escorted to the chapel by a lady-in-waiting in the Royal Bentley, watched from the chapel choir as her husband's was lowered steadily into the royal vault by electric motor. The funeral came after 8 days of public mourning for the Duke, which has seen the Union Jack flown at the half-mast and a virtual halt in official government business. It has also brought renewed focus on the central place of the royals in British life and culture, with the aging Queen and Prince Philip symbolic of another age.
I think it's been very tastefully done, and the weather, you would have never stopped the crowds, whatever was going on. I think he was like a grandfather of the nation, and he was a man's man. He took
We've lost our grandfather.
Where we think that, he was a great guy, and he was a pillar of strength to the Queen. You know, I think he was, without him behind her, I don't think we'd have had as much seen into what was going on, because he introduced the cameras and, you know, meeting the press more. There was quite a family that was kept in the background. So
he modernised the royal family.
He made everybody aware of what was going on. I think we need like a figurehead of a family for everywhere, you know, the Commonwealth or wherever.
To keep the country
keep a family
together.
You know, all families have their ups and downs. There's no happy families anywhere.
First and foremost, I'm a resident. I live here in Windsor, and I've done
for at least a number of years. Also, as well, I'm a huge royal fan, and I've closely followed Prince Philip and his life. And I think he was a fantastic man, and he's a fantastic role model. And he supported our Queen all through her time, and I just think that he was a really good man. And I just think it's important that we come out and show respect for a life well lived. Well, there's several fond memories, but I think a highlight is how brave he was and how heroic he was when this challenge happened in 2020 at the start of this pandemic, that he stood by the Queen, and he stood by indeed the country during these challenging times, and he'll be well remembered.
I think it was a beautiful service because I followed on my phone throughout the time. I think it was, the perfect way to say goodbye to a man who's given so much to this country. For me, it was really about, the man that he was, the help that he gave to millions of people across the globe with the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which is the greatest legacy that he will ever leave in this planet and in this country. So.
From Windsor, United Kingdom, I'm Arabelle Celestino reporting for Eagle News International. We'll live in interesting times.
Thank you, Arabelle, for that report. And now here in the Philippines, a man died after suffering from severe head injury when hit by an uprooted coconut tree at the height of Typhoon Bising with international name Surigay, as it continues to blow fierce winds and dump heavy rains in eastern Visayas, displacing thousands of residents over there. The Office of Civil Defense Regional Office here identified the fatality as Alberto Wales, 79, of San Isidro Village, St. Bernard, Southern Leyte. He was declared dead on arrival at the Anahawan District Hospital at around 5:30 p.m. on Sunday. Meantime, in San Jose, Northern Samar, Louis Din, 40 years old, went missing on April 16 when he and 3 other companions ventured into the sea to pick livestock from a nearby islet. His companions returned to their families on Sunday. Rough seas have stranded at least 1,196 passengers, 521 vehicles, and 17 sea vessels in different ports of northern Samar, Leyte, and southern Leyte provinces. All inbound and outbound flights at the Tacloban Airport have been canceled since Saturday. At least 13,692 individuals have been evacuated to safer grounds in Biliran, Samar, northern Samar, eastern Samar, and the Leyte provinces. Heavy flooding has been reported in 42 villages in northern Samar, 24 villages in eastern Samar. As of Monday morning, the center of the eye of Bising was located at 250 kilometers east-northeast of Virac, Catanduanes.
Israelis have stepped into the streets without masks for the first time in a year. This is a key milestone as the country vaccinates its way out of the coronavirus nightmare. Take a look.
Keeping people safe is also a form of freedom, but it's nice not to have something on your face anymore.
C'est une liberté, on est heureux, on est libre, c'est un miracle.
North of Cairo on Sunday left 11 people dead and 98 others injured, Egypt's health ministry said in the latest rail calamity to hit the north African country. The ministry, in an updated toll, said that 11 people were killed and 98 others injured in a train accident in Tuk, a small farming town in the fertile Nile Delta, about 40 kilometers or 25 miles outside the capital. Egypt's cabinet said in a statement that 4 carriages of the train heading from Cairo to Mansoura, a Delta city, came off the tracks. Dozens of ambulances were dispatched to the site, the health ministry added, and investigators have been sent to determine the accident's cause. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi tasked the military's engineering authority on Sunday with investigating the latest incident, which came on the heels of a deadly train crash last month that left at least 20 people dead. Authorities have not yet provided a reason for Sunday's derailment. A security source told AFP the driver and other rail officials had been detained for questioning.
In other news, more than 31 million people could be unable to feed themselves in the coming months in West and Central Africa. That is according to the World Food Program, warning this and urging immediate action to prevent a catastrophe. Skyrocketing food prices, plummeting economic activity due to the pandemic, and violent conflict in the region mean that around 30% more of the population risks going hungry this year over last year, levels not seen in the better part of a decade. Prices for local food staples have increased to nearly 40%, more than the 5-year average, and in some places have ballooned by over 200%, according to a statement from the agency. It said, quote, immediate action is required to prevent a catastrophe, end quote. The warning echoed expert calls from the Food Crisis Prevention Network a week ago, which said that Nigeria alone could see 12.8 million of its people go hungry. Nigeria is currently gripped by conflicts with jihadists in the northeast, and the tri-border region of Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali has also been plagued by Islamic extremist violence against civilians for years.
Eagle News will be back with more updates. Please don't go away.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business. Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration to update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders to help you discover valuable insights. Sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation, social entrepreneurship, and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Welcome back to the news. A fire in Cape Town has ravaged part of a university library housing a unique collection of African archives, its director said, as the blaze advanced Monday towards the city center. Watch this.
On campus is more than 10 fire vehicles currently. We have 3 buildings currently burning sporadically, but this one is a major problem for us. It's the library with lots and lots of old ancient valuables in the library. And
The fire, which broke out Sunday in the foothills of the landmark Table Mountain before spreading to the University of Cape Town, forced hundreds of students to flee on foot. The African Studies section of the 1930s building and its parquet-floored reading room were completely gutted, the head of UCT Libraries, Ujala Sakgur, said in a Facebook post on Sunday. Authorities said a full assessment of the damage will be carried out once the building is safe to enter. Hundreds of students housed closer to the blaze have been moved to temporary accommodation, with donors sending food and other essentials. Firefighters were still battling the blaze on Monday as high winds pushed the fire west, closer to the city center. The cause of the fire is under investigation, with one suspect taken into custody overnight. No casualties have been reported so far, apart from a few firefighters who have been injured.
Some 1,300 overseas Filipino workers would be affected by Hong Kong's two-week ban on flights from the Philippines, which takes effect tomorrow, Tuesday, according to the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. Now, the Hong Kong government has announced that it will suspend flights originating from India, Pakistan, and the Philippines. The city put in place new restrictions on April 14, banning all flights from these locations where 5 or more passengers test positive with the N501Y mutant virus strains over a period of 7 days. The current ban on the three countries is retrospectively applied. POEA Chief Bernard Olalia, however, assured that the temporary travel ban imposed by the Chinese semi-autonomous region will not stop them from continuously processing the documents of applicants. At the same time, Olalia reported that prior to the pandemic, the country is sending 13,000 OFWs to Hong Kong every month and more or less 168,000 annually. Olalia said Hong Kong is the fourth top destination for OFWs next to Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Singapore. Reports said Hong Kong will ban flights from the Philippines, India, and Pakistan for 14 days, and this will be starting April 20.
In other news, U.S. investment bank J.P. Morgan on Monday confirmed it is financing the Breakaway Super League, featuring 12 of Europe's top football clubs, which threatens to shake up the world's biggest sport. Each of the clubs from England, Italy, and Spain will receive a one-off payment of 3.5 billion euros, or about $4.2 billion. 6 Premier League teams, Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal, Chelsea, Manchester City, and Tottenham are involved, alongside Real Madrid, Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Juventus, Inter Milan, and AC Milan. The clubs were immediately accused of greed and cynicism and threatened with international exile. Organizers said in a statement that 3 more founding members would be announced, with a further 5 places up for grabs through a qualifying system each year, and the inaugural edition to start as soon as practicable. The Super League announcement appeared to be timed to preempt UEFA's own scheduled unveiling of reforms to the Champions League on Monday, with an expansion to 36 teams from 32 and 2 wildcard slots expected to be among the plans. There would be a minimum of 10 games for each team. UEFA and the 3 countries' football associations and domestic leagues described the breakaway as cynical. The European Commission Vice President for Promoting the European Way of Life said a values-driven European model of sport based on diversity and inclusion must be defended.
In other business news, AirAsia Philippines is looking to tap more e-wallet service providers to allow more payment options to its passengers. Spokesperson Steve Daly-San told the Philippine News Agency that they will definitely tap other e-wallets to make sure that guests get the most out of their travel and lifestyle experience. The carrier recently partnered with Mint, the operator of GCash. Daly-San said the partnership started in February, but only offline payments were facilitated previously. The difference now, he said, is that online payments via GCash can now also be facilitated. It's made available online so more guests can have access to it, and at the same time, this forms part of AirAsia's greater push for digitalization. They said we want our guests to experience convenience and contactless transactions in view of the present health situation. Passengers may book their flights and pay for their meals or additional baggage using GCash, and they can select wallet on the AirAsia website or app or scan or code at the check-in counter to pay cashless.
And now for our sports news, we have Tenny Sumagi with the story. Tenny.
Things look bright and promising here in the Big Apple for the New York Knicks, who are looking forward to making the playoffs for the first time since 2013. The Knicks won their sixth straight game, an overtime thriller against the New Orleans Pelicans on Sunday, behind strong performances by Derrick Rose and Reggie Bullock.
He draws a lot of attention for him in the pick and roll. So players like myself, other shooters on my team, we just got to stay space, and he always will make the right read. He's an aggressive scorer also too. So you got to play him for the pass and for the scoring ability that he has. So he kicked it out. He trusted in me to be able to knock the shot down, and that's what I did. And I thank him and my teammates, for continuing to tell me to shoot all night.
I haven't had this feeling in a long time, let alone be on the winning streak. So I'm grateful to be in this situation every night. It could be someone different. The biggest thing is Jew is setting the tempo every night with putting pressure on the rim, putting pressure on the defense, and we're trying to play around them. Everybody doing their job by spinning the floor, getting to spots, and just trying to make his job easier because he's seeing double teams every night.
The last time Bam Adebayo hit a game-winning shot was in high school until Sunday, where his buzzer-beating bucket helped the Heat edge out the Nets.
Supposed to we got to stop, call a timeout, and I wasn't cool with that. So when I caught it, I looked at the time and it said 11 seconds. I looked at Spo, and it was one of those looks like, don't call timeout. Like this is the one moment I haven't been doubled in the game. Don't call timeout. And made the shot. To see a reaction like that, it kind of felt like when 3 was here.
Landry Shamet had a career high of 30 points, including 7 from downtown.
And we got to be better defensively. Even though we didn't score, there were a couple of slip-ups there throughout the game, really. So, there's a number of things I think we can improve upon and take from this loss. But overall, I'm happy with how we fought and kind of battled a little bit of adversity.
Tune in to Eagle News for more stories and highlights on the NBA throughout the season. In New York, Tenny Sumagi, Eagle News, we live in interesting times.
And finally, in our news, NASA successfully flew the Ingenuity helicopter on Mars. According to data and images sent back to Earth, take a look.
April 9th was a surprise. We were 2 days away from first flight and just onto our very last checkout. high-speed spin of the rotor system. And there we discovered an intricate timing issue that was preventing the helicopter from transitioning to flight mode, the mode that we need to be in to spin the rotor system high speed. So right after we found that, our team went into high gear, identified 2 possible solutions in a couple of days, and we picked the solution that is really the most simple, most straightforward option. So a note there, though, that the solution that we have adopted, it does transition to the helicopter into flight mode about 85% of the time. So when we go to flight, and if we don't go into flight mode, the helicopter will stay safe, and we will attempt the first flight again. So just last Friday, we took this solution, applied it to Ingenuity, and successfully spun Ingenuity's rotor system full speed.
Now, the space agency had originally planned the flight for April 11, but postponed it over a software issue that was identified during a planned high-speed test of the aircraft's rotors. The issue has since been resolved, and the 4-pound drone could achieve its feat by around 3:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Now, the Deep Space Network, or DSN, is NASA's international array of giant radio antennas that supports interplanetary spacecraft mission. The first powered flight on Earth was achieved by the Wright brothers in 1903 in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. A piece of fabric from that plane has been tucked inside Ingenuity in honor of that feat. And we'll have more of that tomorrow as we follow this developing story.
Exciting times for our engineers and scientists.
It's true. That's true.
Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for watching the news tonight. Please join us again tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
We'll see you back tomorrow. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live
in
interesting times.